Before the cameras ever entered the picture, Rebecca Romney's story was rooted in something far quieter than television fame. Born Rebecca Angeline Ent in Phoenix, Arizona, she grew up in a household where books were part of daily life rather than decoration. Her parents were scientists, and conversations at home revolved around ideas, research, and discovery. Reading was not a hobby but a shared language. Science fiction, classical literature, and historical texts shaped her early imagination. That environment nurtured a deep respect for knowledge and careful thinking. Long before viewers associated her with a Las Vegas pawn shop, she had already developed the habits that would define her professional life: discipline, curiosity, and intellectual independence. Understanding this foundation is essential to understanding everything that came later. Her television presence was never about performance. It was the natural extension of a life built around scholarship, precision, and a genuine love of rare and meaningful books. As a student, Romney's fascination with language set her apart. While many classmates approached foreign languages as requirements to complete, she treated them as keys to unlocking entire civilizations. She studied French and Japanese early on, then later pursued Latin and ancient Greek with unusual intensity. She believed that translations, while helpful, could never fully capture the nuance of original texts. Reading works in their native languages became both a discipline and a passion. This dedication shaped how she evaluated historical documents years later. Language, for her, was not just communication. It was context, culture, and evidence. By immersing herself in linguistic structure and historical meaning, she developed a sharp analytical framework. That framework would later allow her to spot inconsistencies in manuscripts that others might miss. Even at this stage, there was no blueprint leading toward television. Her path pointed toward academia or research. Yet the skills she built during these years quietly prepared her for a very different public role. When she enrolled at Brigham Young University, she chose fields that reflected intellectual depth rather than commercial practicality. Philosophy, classical studies, and linguistics are disciplines that reward patience and critical reasoning, but do not promise obvious career outcomes. Romney understood that risk. She pursued the work anyway. Academic life demanded long hours of reading, writing, and structured debate. She examined ancient arguments about free will, ethics, and metaphysics while simultaneously engaging with classical literature in original languages. This environment sharpened her analytical discipline. Precision mattered. Citations mattered. Context mattered. These habits later became essential in the rare book trade, where a small oversight can mean the difference between authenticity and costly error. At the time, however, her ambitions leaned toward scholarship, not commerce. She has openly acknowledged that rare books were not originally her dream. In fact, she once assumed antiquarian collecting was a niche world reserved for older enthusiasts. Fate, rather than strategy, redirected her course. The turning point came unexpectedly after graduation. Romney applied for what she believed was a management position at a rare book company. Only during the interview process did she realize the role was actually for a rare book specialist. She lacked direct industry experience and considered walking away. Instead, she stayed and leaned into her strengths. Her ability to analyze texts across languages and centuries quickly stood out. Rather than focusing on salesmanship, she approached books as historical artifacts that required verification and context. That difference proved valuable. She was hired and soon found herself handling materials worth significant sums of money. In the rare book world, errors are expensive. Authenticating a document requires understanding paper, ink, printing techniques, provenance, and historical consistency. Romney's academic background gave her an advantage. What began as a misunderstood job application evolved into a calling. She discovered that rare books were not relics gathering dust, but living pieces of history carrying financial and cultural weight. By the time Pawn Stars was gaining popularity, Romney had already established herself in the rare book industry. In Las Vegas, she helped manage operations for a respected rare book gallery. Her responsibilities extended beyond sales. She evaluated authenticity, oversaw acquisitions, and protected the business from costly mistakes. The rare antiques community in Las Vegas was smaller than many realized, and professional reputations carried weight. It was through this network that her path intersected with Rick Harrison of the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop. When television producers began shaping Pawn stars, credibility became essential. The show needed experts who could ground dramatic negotiations in factual authority. Harrison reportedly reached out to someone he already trusted. Romney entered the show not as a television personality, but as a working specialist invited to share her expertise. She walked into an established program, yet her calm, analytical style would soon become one of its most trusted elements. From her earliest appearances, Romney's on-screen presence stood out for its restraint. She did not raise her voice, exaggerate reactions, or chase dramatic moments. Instead, she examined documents carefully, often focusing on details invisible to casual viewers. Paper texture, binding style, ink composition, and historical context all informed her assessments. When she concluded that an item was authentic, her confidence felt earned. When she determined it was flawed or misrepresented, she explained why with measured clarity. That consistency built audience trust. Viewers understood that her evaluations were grounded in method rather than spectacle. In a format built around negotiation and entertainment, her steadiness added balance. She became associated with intellectual credibility, particularly when dealing with letters, manuscripts, and first editions. Over time, books appeared more frequently on the show, and her role expanded organically. She was not a regular cast member, yet her contributions anchored some of the program's most educational segments. As the show's popularity grew, so did the complexity of the items presented. Historical documents can carry emotional and cultural weight beyond their monetary value. Romney handled materials connected to wars, religion, political movements, and social change. Authenticity in these cases involved more than confirming age. Provenance, ownership history, and legal status all mattered. A legitimate document could still present complications if its chain of custody was unclear. On television, these nuances had to be communicated efficiently while maintaining accuracy. Romney navigated that balance carefully. She often explained why condition dramatically affects value, why first editions are not automatically rare, and why minor alterations can reduce worth. Each explanation educated viewers while protecting the shop's reputation. Her calm delivery reinforced the idea that expertise is rooted in evidence. Over time, her segments became anticipated moments for audiences interested in historical depth, rather than negotiation theatrics. Behind the scenes, however, the demands of television and professional scholarship do not always align seamlessly. Romney was not a full-time television employee. She continued managing substantial responsibilities within the rare book trade. Filming schedules depended on authentic book items arriving at the pawn shop, which meant appearances were irregular. Some weeks she appeared frequently, other stretches passed without her presence. As her leadership roles expanded within her company, travel and filming became more challenging to coordinate. At the same time, public visibility introduced new pressures. Expertise on television invites scrutiny from viewers who may not fully understand the complexities of authentication. Every appraisal carried reputational stakes. In industries built on trust, perception matters. Balancing a growing off-camera career with an unpredictable production schedule required careful prioritization. Over time, that balancing act became increasingly difficult. Her professional trajectory was accelerating, and opportunities outside television demanded focused attention. When her regular appearances eventually tapered off, there was no dramatic announcement. The show continued, rotating other experts as needed. Romney did not publicly criticize the program, nor did she offer a detailed farewell. From a viewer's perspective, the absence felt abrupt. Speculation naturally followed, as it often does when public figures step away without explanation. Yet professional growth often occurs quietly. As she advanced into senior leadership roles, her responsibilities expanded to include acquisitions strategy, institutional relationships, and research oversight. Such work requires sustained presence and discretion. Relocating for professional advancement further complicated ongoing television involvement. In industries where confidentiality and credibility are paramount, reducing media exposure can be a practical decision rather than a reactive one. While audiences may crave definitive narratives, real career decisions are often more nuanced. In this case, the available evidence suggests a shift in priorities rather than controversy. After stepping back from regular television appearances, Romney did not retreat from her field. Instead, she deepened her engagement with it. She became increasingly involved in discussions about collecting culture, representation in literary history, and access to rare materials. Public talks and interviews focused on scholarship rather than entertainment. She advocated for broader recognition of overlooked authors and underrepresented voices within historical collections. This evolution reflected continuity rather than departure. The same analytical mindset that defined her television segments continued guiding her professional mission. By narrowing her public visibility, she preserved space for focused research and leadership. For some viewers, the lack of a televised goodbye felt unresolved. Yet in many academic and professional contexts, transitions are rarely theatrical. They unfold through shifting responsibilities and changing commitments. Her trajectory illustrates how expertise can move fluidly between public platforms and private institutional work without losing integrity. The broader question raised by her departure touches on the relationship between expertise and entertainment. Reality television thrives on clear storylines and emotional arcs. Scholarly careers, by contrast, prioritize accuracy, discretion, and long-term credibility. Navigating both spaces simultaneously requires careful boundaries. Romney's approach consistently emphasized evidence over drama. That commitment likely influenced her decision-making as her off-screen responsibilities grew. Experts who appear on television must consider how visibility shapes professional perception. For some, media presence expands opportunity. For others, it complicates relationships with collectors, institutions, and peers. Choosing when to step back can be as strategic as choosing when to participate. In Romney's case, the move appears aligned with career advancement rather than retreat. Her continued involvement in the rare book world suggests continuity of purpose. The absence of public conflict or formal statements underscores a pattern consistent with her on-screen demeanor: measured, reserved, and focused on substance. Looking back, her time on Pawn Stars represents a distinct chapter rather than a defining identity. She entered the program as a working specialist, contributed credibility during a period of growth, and eventually redirected her energy toward expanding professional commitments. Viewers often seek dramatic explanations when familiar faces disappear from television. Yet sometimes the simplest explanation is professional evolution. Romney's story highlights how expertise can intersect with entertainment without being consumed by it. She demonstrated that calm authority can resonate with audiences, even in formats built on negotiation and spectacle. Her quiet exit mirrors her quiet presence. Instead of crafting a narrative around departure, she continued building influence within her field. Whether one believes she left at the ideal moment or simply followed opportunity, the pattern reflects intentional decision-making. In the end, her legacy on screen rests not on controversy, but on consistency, education, and trust, qualities that endure beyond any single television appearance.